Okay, kia ora, now we're back. I want to talk about ownership. And again, this is another promise of the Remix program that if you come through, this is one of the pillars, one of the promises that I am making that, this is what you will learn to be able to take home with you and to have in your basket to pull out and use, right? In those moments where you need clarity, in those moments when you're traversing things. And this one is that ownership will be your superpower. It will become your superpower, taking ownership. And I'm going to share a little story around what comes to mind when I think about my relationship with ownership, because it wasn't good to begin with. So, if you have been in my little world online, I've been making videos, talking online, sharing on social media for the last 10 years. Okay. And I've gone through evolutions, but one particular time, which it was a time, I would just say and do whatevs, whatever, you know. If I had a strong reaction, boom, it was coming out of my mouth. What, as I said, there's been evolutions. And, one of the things that I would find myself doing was just if I would feel strongly about something, I would just say it. And look, I still do this, right? However, there was this flavor to me where it, it wasn't really all that thought out, right? It was raw. It was raw, but the thing was is that I didn't really consider how the other person might feel. Okay. And so I was just speaking from this place of this is my truth, you know? And so anyways, what started to happen was that I was learning by doing this, but again, it was having an effect on other people, and they would let me know that, right? And so I started to think, all right, well, if I'm just speaking my truth, but people are getting kind of offended by it, well, I think at the time I might have been like, well, that's not my problem. However, some of these people were like genuinely like good people, right? So, well, everyone's good people. So I decided that this was a pattern, and I was going to have a look at it, right? And so I developed this concept, which I teach to people that I work with or that I come into contact that this may be useful for, um, around the treasure box. And this treasure box is designed to store things up in my mind, right? To where I could probably have a look at these and take some ownership on. And I also developed a model, which I won't go into too much depth, but whenever my mind is trapped, because we react to protect ourselves, right? So whenever my mind is caught in a trap, whether I'm triggered, T, R, you know, resisting something, A, very attached, or P, projecting, that is when my mind is trapped. And so when I recognize these things, I may not be able to deal with it in the moment because I'm human and we go through things. I can at least put it up in this treasure box that I can come back to. And I always make it a priority to come back to my treasure box and, address what is in there. And so these interactions that I was having with people, I would put into the treasure box to assess them. Not all of them. Sometimes I would speak truth and it was raw and it was, it was hot, it was spicy, okay? However, I didn't feel it needed to go in the treasure box. It just felt like, yeah, that was my truth and that's what that was. However, there were some times when I would get into dialogue with people and they would give me something to consider, right? They would genuinely give me something to consider, and I thought, oh, that needs to go into the treasure box. One of these situations was a dialogue I had with a sister, and there were, when she responded, there was just things that I really didn't consider. And so here I was, just like, you know, popping off and giving my 2 cents. And when she replied, I was like, oh, like yep, yep, I may have overshot here. Like I may have overstepped here into the treasure box that went. And when I had the time and space to have a look at it a couple of days later, and I felt into that, I really did genuinely feel sorry about some of the things I had said without knowing all of the details. And I actually asked for a conversation to, you know, make right make right what I had said, and offer apology for what I had said and how I had behaved and reacted. And you know, the exchange and the conversation that we had was really beautiful. And you know, when I reached out, I knew that there was a possibility that this person may not want to have further dialogue, and that was okay. But in this situation, they did, and we formed, a beautiful connection. You know, even went on to doing some, closer collaborations and doing some work together, which was really beautiful. There have also been times where, following on from that, things would go into the treasure box, and I would reach out. I had reached out in this one particular situation to rectify or to just have a discussion, and it wasn't accepted. There was no desire from the other person to want to have any further dialogue, and that was okay as well. So over the years, this concept of the treasure box and putting things in there has been my way to take ownership for my part that I play in a dialogue, in a situation, right? And really accepting that another person also has their right and their part to play. So that treasure box concept changed ownership for me, right? And ultimately, it helped me to, before things get in the treasure box, maybe have a think about things, right? So I was able to, because I had a full treasure box, treasure box was getting full, I was able to go, okay, well, instead of filling it and then having to deal with things afterwards, how about we think about what the consequences, or what I'm going to have to do afterwards should I react like this. And so it gave me an opportunity to pause and truly choose my response. And there have been times where I would calculate it to a degree and go, yeah, no, I'm going to still say what I'm going to say, right? And yeah, maybe later on they end up in the treasure box, but there's not so much to rectify afterwards. Maybe it's just the coming back, and after the dust is settled, and you know, having a conversation. So yeah, the the power of ownership is that it frees us up. It frees us up from things that we can potentially hold on to, that can potentially, fester or, carry on or play out or drive our behavior down the track. And so for this program, for the remix, I was like, this is something that I absolutely had to journey with, and it's one of the like it's a very important thing that I would love to share on within the remix program. So just wanted to share that. Yeah, when we live a life of taking responsibility for our accounts, for our emotional accounts, and keeping those balanced and clean, we have more space within us. We have more capacity within us to move forward on our walk in life, with a clear conscience. Yeah, and just more space, more capacity to do what we got to do and be who we need to be. All right. Kia ora.